My childhood console was the PS2. I grew up playing Ben 10 Protector of Earth and the first God of War, and I was too scared to play the original RE4. If only I took better care of the discs so I could play you now. And even with my limited library of PS2 classics, I cannot even begin to describe how much I love this console. Every game made for it, good or bad, is, in my opinion, a timeless masterpiece. I'm willing to fist fight somebody to prove once and for all that the PS2 is the greatest video game console ever made. But with my love for it, I am also able to see some of its biggest problems. Most notably, its lack of UI. Console UI is extremely important, and while I would argue the very little UI it does have is still aesthetic as fuck, compared to other stuff, well, yeah, it's pretty boring in comparison. What it lacks in UI though, it makes up for with its incredibly iconic startup animation. Those weird blocks and lights floating around them in the blue mist, the ethereal sounds that plays every time you boot it up, and the tension as you wait for the PS2 logo to appear, hoping to not get hit with the red screen of death. Fuck! Now, I could talk for hours about how much I love this startup, but while watching it for the 5th time this week, I decided that I wanted to focus this video more on the evolution of these startups and how they influence their console's aesthetics. I'm gonna look at startups more than the UI because, well, console UI analysis videos are a dime a dozen, and I think it's more important to talk about how the first thing you see when you launch a console is the most important part. Now let's go back to the 70s with one of the oldest console startups of all time. The Atari. Oh my god, they're gay!
He's gay! I'm not gay.
The second they managed to get color in these things, they went from pure white to rainbow. Atari, I know what you are. Moving on from them, we have what is actually a very amusing similarity between the NES and the Sega Master System. I suppose Sega do what Nintendo also do, just on the ground instead of space. I will say though, the Sega one's jingle is 10 times better than the NES's. Although, it seems the good music is only for the Japanese to enjoy, as the rest of the world gets this thing that sounds like my brain when I wake up at 4 AM to take a piss. Next up, we have my favorite console of all time, the Nintendo Please Set Discard. Also, why is Luigi turning off the lights? What the fuck? Oh god, Mario, don't kill him! Sega! You know, I'll never understand why Sega went from such an iconic intro to this weird 2-second long icon. Icon, oh my god, I get it. Did anyone notice how the SNES logo just stole the colors of Windows? Also another banger. You know, I actually didn't know that the Neo Geo was a real console until this year when I got into Fatal Fury and King of Fighters. I legit thought it was some, like, fake in-universe console, and looking back on Terry's Smash reveal, I can't help but realize how stupid I was. Like, how the fuck did I miss that? Also, remember how big of a deal 3D was in the 80s? Well, Sega wanted you to know that their consoles could absolutely handle anything 3D. So thus begins the era of Sega startups, where they really wanted you to know that the text on screen can do cool flips and stuff. I love the jingle that they used, but it's the same one every time. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a banger, but some variety would be nice. Some of these get so over the top as well, like, okay, chill, I'll buy the console. The Sega CD one is my favorite because it's just so random. The logo starts flipping at the speed of sound like it tapped into the Speed Force or some shit, while the Sega logo orbits it. Then it zooms out before flipping back into place. Like, why is this so excessive? Also, love the compressed JPEG of Earth in the background. It's just cherry on top, really. Speaking of Earth, for some reason all of these early 80s consoles just love showing pictures of space in the background. Like, I get it, space exploration was a big thing back then, but I mean, this feels like a phase. I mean, shit, there was literally a console called the Sega Saturn, which also has like 50 different startup animations. This console no one's ever heard of, called the Real 3DO Interactive Multiplayer, what the fuck is that name, might have the most perfect reaction image of all time. The Atari Jaguar is a legendary console in its own right, and at one point in 1993, it was the most powerful console of its generation. Nowadays, it's in the public domain and a haven for hobbyists making games for old systems. Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming. But that's not what we care about, no. Check out the Jagacube. Something that's really telling of the era that these were all made in is that a lot of them feature CDs. And there's like a bajillion of them. Now we've reached the era of consoles that you'll probably recognize, such as here's a controversial hot take. I do not care for the PS1 startup. In fact, I think it sucks. It's so lame. It's literally just two logos and boring legal text. The jingle is the only good part, and its back must be hurting from how much carrying it has to do. Like, I get that people have nostalgia for it, but the PS1 does not have a good startup animation. I will die on this hill. This thing, called the BSX, I think, or Satellaview, apparently, according to Wikipedia, I don't know what this thing is called, is the most aesthetic vaporwave shit I have ever seen. And it's not even a console. No, the Satellaview is actually a satellite modem that allowed people to download things like magazines and music onto their SNES. They would literally just like broadcast games and you'd get to play them at certain hours of the day. It's so awesome. Okay, hi, Editor Saigon here. So I did some more research and apparently BSX is not the name of the console, but actually the name of what is probably the coolest menu system ever. The console basically comes with like a game cartridge that is a glorified menu designed to look like an RPG. You get to like create your own character and everything. This might be one of the coolest pieces of gaming history I've discovered. The Virtual Boy, on the other hand, is fucking terrifying. I know this console was invented by Sam Riegel and is notorious for being one of the worst consoles in history, but they really didn't need to make it look or sound like the interface of some nuclear fallout bunker's computer system. Like, I just want to play some Mario Tennis, man, come on. So let's use an iconic startup that also doubles as a main menu screen to cleanse our palate. You know, the N64 really is the perfect combination of all of their previous console startups. It's got the Windows coloration of the SNES logo, plus includes Mario messing around on the screen like the NES, the please set discard. Also, the logo comes out of the ground, which ripples like liquid, but then Mario is running around on it? Can Mario stand on water? You know, this further supports my theory that the events of Mario 64 were actually fictionalized retellings of the Bible. Also, kind of random, but remember when people used to joke that the successor to the Xbox 360 was going to be the Xbox 720? Well, I did some research and turns out Nintendo actually intended to do something similar with their numbered console. The Nintendo 128 was at one point supposed to be the successor of the Nintendo 64. In fact, they were so sure of the name being locked in that the new Mario game for that console, and also a direct sequel to Mario 64, was actually going to be called Mario 128. They later gave up on that idea entirely because clearly someone on the team had some common sense and decided to maybe just call it the GameCube instead. The name Mario 128 would later be recycled for a tech demo in the early 2000s where they demonstrated how the GameCube could handle killing 128 Marios without crashing. Wow, this really is just Did You Know Gaming. Speaking of the GameCube, yeah, it's pretty great. Now let's move on to the other side of the Pacific with the original Xbox. See, the Xbox was made with one intention: to be the cooler, more hardcore American alternative to these weak beta male Japanese consoles with their JRPGs and their stupid Italian plumbers. The Xbox was made for real gamers. And this console startup perfectly fits that mindset. And I know I said I wouldn't talk about console UI, but I just have to talk about the original Xbox. It's just, God, it's so perfect. It's so heavy and clunky in the best way possible. Like, every menu feels like you're actually operating a large machine, and like the neon green helps it so much because it feels like it's running on nuclear waste or something. I never even owned an OG Xbox, but every time I see it now, I just want to crack open a bottle of Mountain Dew, open a bag of Doritos, and go play some Halo. Also, did you know that this startup is actually not pre-rendered? Every time you turn the console on in an attempt to show rival companies how powerful the machine was, it renders and displays the animation all by itself in a matter of seconds. That is just so unbelievably awesome, and makes the console feel even cooler. They went through all the effort to make that possible, all because the 90s and early 2000s was basically just one big dick measuring contest for these companies. You know, I was never a Sega kid growing up, but seeing this kind of made me wish I was, because the Dreamcast has one hell of an aesthetic. It's got that perfect mix of modern day minimalism and the early 2000s charm and personality. If this came out today, this animation would be like a simple fade with no sound effects or jingle. Just boring legal text and like 3 epilepsy warnings. Also, the newer versions of the startup still go ham with the flipping, so I guess old habits die hard for Sega. Obligatory DS mention, as I feel like if I don't mention it, people are gonna fucking crucify me. Others might disagree, but I personally think the PSP has one of the most visually appealing startups of all time. The Xbox 360 has one of the biggest downgrades I've ever seen because it went from this to the boring minimalist shit that we've got today. Really encapsulates the mindset of modern Xbox, going from like Mountain Dew teabagging epic gamer time, yeah, to hey, you can watch movies with your family on this shit. Like, the first version isn't groundbreaking or anything, but it's got more of a personality than whatever the fuck this is. Although, while I find the 360's downfall disappointing, compared to the PS3, it's nothing. In fact, the loss of personality from the PS2 to the PS3 might be the biggest fall-off in gaming history. I get that people have nostalgia for the PS3 now as well, but it shouldn't be this boring. Like, it would have been no different if they just didn't give it a startup at all. Consoles don't even show you their logo no more, they just look at you like this. And it only gets worse from now on, so before I do a lightning round of all the shitty minimalist logos, here's yet another palette cleanser. Alright, get ready. The 3DS. The Wii U. The PS4. The Xbox One. The Nintendo Switch, which doesn't even show you the startup after you launch it for the first time. The PS5, which also doesn't show you the startup after your first launch. And last, and certainly the least, the Xbox Series X and S. God, that was just way too much soulless brand company schlock. I think I almost died.